This week I'm visiting some of my local garden centers and nurseries to try to determine what plants I'm going to buy to put in my garden this year. So join me as I show you some of the tips that I use in picking the right plants. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and I start a lot of my plants from seed, but I do buy some to transplant in spring. And that's what I'm doing today, is starting to look at some of the plants that I might want to buy. One of the very first things I do when I see a plant is look at the plant tag. A good plant tag tells you everything you need to grow. First off, of course, what the plant is, but how much sun it requires, and usually on the back it'll tell you all the needs: water, how big the plant gets, which can be quite important. And I always look specifically at the zone, especially for perennials, because I want to make sure that I can grow it in my garden. If it's an annual like this one, it'll say non-hardy below 32 degrees. And even if it doesn't say annual anywhere on the tag, like down here where it says mounding annual, if it won't grow below 32 degrees, you can consider it to be an annual. Look for banners at the front of flats. They'll give you a lot of information about the plants too. Or you can look at the individual tags. These might not be as in-depth as a lot of the perennial pots that you'll buy, but it does include some important information. Many of the big box stores will get their plants from regional greenhouses. So even though my area might be zone 5, the plants might be grown and distributed to nearby areas that are zone 6 or zone 7. So that's a primary reason why I check the plant tags, because I want to make sure that the plants, the perennials in particular, will survive in my zone. Here's an example of a plant that's being sold as a perennial in my garden center. But if you look at the zone, it's zone 7. Only go down to 0 degrees. It can handle freezing, but not my winters. Here's another one, a nice lavender. But when you look at it, I see that it's zone 6. So if I were to put this in a perfect location, a little microclimate in my garden, it might survive some of our harsh winters. But it's probably best to just move on and find something else. At your local nursery, you're less likely to have a problem with plants outside your zone, because typically they're going to be growing most of the plants themselves, but it's still something to look for. Plants are probably going to be laid out differently in a nursery as well. I like walking up and down the rows inside these little greenhouses to see what they have, but you can expect that the plant tags will be much different. You may only have one sign for a whole bunch of plants. It's important to look at a tag thoroughly. Note that this is a royal purple smoke tree, which implies it's going to be big, and the size says that. It reaches 15 feet tall and 10 to 12 feet wide. But if you go to the nursery, you might find something a little different, like this smoke bush. Well, it's really not a bush. It's the same plant, 10 to 15 feet high and 10 to 15 feet wide. Now, I do encourage that you have a plan when it comes to planting, but even I just come to the garden centers and nurseries to see what's available. I might have a spot that's in the sun, and all I'm looking for is a plant that'll grow in the sun. Or if it's a shady area, I want to see what plants are available for shady spots. I might have some ideas about specific plants, but I just love going and looking at plants and maybe discovering something that I didn't even know I wanted. I'll wander the aisles, and then when I see something I like and look at the plant tag to make sure that I can grow it, I look closer to see if there's any damage on the outside of the leaves, or more importantly, the inside of the plant. I want to look at the overall condition of the plant to see what kind of shape it's in. One of the things that I'll look for specifically is insect damage. If you see lots of little holes or lots of discolored areas, it's probably insect damage, and you want to stay away from it. You may or may not be able to see the little insects that cause this damage. But if there's a whole bunch of plants all next to each other and all of them have the same damage, it's probably insects. Don't bring these insects home by not buying these plants. Look someplace else. You'll be able to tell whether they've been taking care of the plants by looking to see how well they've been watered. If they all look good, then that's probably a good indication they're being taken care of. But if some of the ones on the bottom or maybe on the inside of the shelves don't look so good, then maybe that's just because they're only watering the top and they're not looking at every single plant's well-being. It's not unusual to see some wilting if the plants are in the sun during the heat of the day. If you see a whole section of plants that are wilted in the sheltered area or the shade, it's probably a big problem. And so I'll stick my finger in the pot to check the moisture level. And if it's really dry, I walk away. These plants are in direct sunlight, and you can see damage on the leaves. The soil's pretty dry, but the plant itself is still in pretty good shape. You can see it's green and growing, and I've used this to my advantage because you might be able to get a discount from the manager. And if there's 2 plants growing in a pot, you not only get 2 for the price of 1, but you might get 2 for less than half price. And check the clearance section if they have one, because a lot of those damaged plants go for clearance prices. And you might find bargains, but you might also find a bunch of dead plants. So be sure and look through them quite thoroughly, and don't just pay a bargain price to get a dead plant. Here are some small lemon trees that probably sustained some freeze damage recently. There's no bargain here. These plants are all brown, completely dead. Walk away. It's nice to look at all the pretty flowers, but when you buy something to put in your landscape, you might not want to choose the one that's loaded with flowers. Many plants have a limited number of buds that'll turn into flowers, and so if you buy them already flowering, you'll miss out. So look for unopened flowers to get the biggest bang for your buck. Or better yet, find a plant that has no flowers yet. The buds have yet to open, and you'll have a much longer bloom period. It is okay to get annuals that are already flowering because they'll add instant color to your garden. So I'll still look for plants like this one where the blooms aren't fully developed, but go ahead and get some that are already in full bloom just to jumpstart the color in your garden. It's tempting to get a plant that already has fruit growing because you think you might be getting a head start, but it's just the opposite. This plant has already put a lot of energy into flowers and fruiting. I'd rather get a plant that hasn't done that yet, so when I put it in the garden, all of its energy will be going towards root development. Be sure to also look at the roots, the bottom of the pot, because you may find if there's roots growing out of the bottom, like in this one, this has probably been in this pot a long time, and you may want to choose a plant that doesn't have roots that are filling the pot. Instead, roots that'll have a chance to grow in your garden. Sometimes the roots aren't growing a lot outside, just a little bit, and you can actually just squeeze the pot and then separate it from the pot to look on the inside and really look. These roots have really wrapped around quite a bit, so it'll require some separating of the roots and pruning before I put it in the ground, but I may move on to something else. By thoroughly checking the plant tag, inspecting the plant for insects, looking at the blossoms and the fruit, inspecting the roots, when it's all said and done, you'll probably have good success with your plant. And of course, be on the lookout for those bargains. In a nursery, you'll probably see plants side by side. These little pots and little tomatoes are inexpensive, but right next door are big tomatoes in the same size pot. That's a bargain. They'll go in the ground, they'll do very well, and I'll have saved money by buying these smaller pots. And if you look for 2 tomatoes in a pot, you're getting 2 plants for the price of 1. And there you have it. Some of the things I look for when choosing my plants from a nursery or garden center. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know below. If you want to see more of these videos, then subscribe to the Gardener Scott channel if you haven't already done so. If you like the video, you can give me a thumbs up and share it. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.